I guess you're on the end. You have to take what's left. Welcome to the town hall meeting. We're so glad to have you here tonight. We really missed doing this last year. You know, dang pandemics. It'll be fun to answer questions in 30 years to my grandchildren and great grandchildren about what was it like to live through the pandemic. I would like to just start out. I'm Mayor Wendy Prey, and we're just tickled to have you. And to say that we live in a great city. We love our city, and I think everybody here would agree. And we're embarking on an election cycle, and that's part of the beauty of this country. I'm so grateful for. I have to tell you, I get choked up almost every meeting when we say the pledge, because we live in a great country, and then we live in a wonderful city. And I know all the candidates that are running, and every single one of them loves this city. And we're lucky to have people that love our city. I just want to give you just a little rundown on the state of affairs in the city. And we had a question, and we probably won't answer it in the formal questions, because the question was just about the health of the city. And I want to tell you, I think our city's pretty healthy. We're pretty healthy financially. We've had some big expenses in the last couple of years, but they've been infrastructure things, and they're taken care of, and they were well taken care of and well supervised, and they're not ongoing, you know. And so I think financially, we're in pretty good shape. We're in a weird position because we're all residential, and so our taxes are always going to be high. But I think the money is well managed, and you've got very the word is not responsible, but your council is very careful in considering how this money is spent, and they are very aware that it really isn't city money, it's your money that gets spent or saved. Anyway, so the city's in good shape that way. We're in good shape as far as we're getting more and more standardized and organized. When you start out little, everything grows organically, and you just kind of have to grow up. And the city's doing a good job moving toward more and more standardized and organized things. We've had a lot of dedicated help from our employees, from your elected officials, and lots of volunteer effort. Lots of people that have put in just their time behind the scenes with no really recognition. And we're in good shape that way. And quite frankly, we have a lot of citizen engagement, and that is the sign of a healthy city. You know, it's wonderful. Also, some of you may not really be aware, but when I thought about it, we have a very good, right now on the council, representation of the whole city. It just happens that the city council members are well spread throughout the city. So every area is represented. Our city used to be so small that it felt like we all knew everybody, and we really don't anymore. And so I think some people sometimes think there's only one guy, and then that really pays attention to me, and then everybody else is all over there doing their thing. Well, there really are lots of areas in the city, and our council members are really spread out and get a good representation of the different people that live in different areas. And we also have very different professional backgrounds, current activity backgrounds. We've got men and women. We just have a good spread, lots of different opinions, and that represents our city well, and our citizens well, and you well. Our responses, the things that we've had to do in order, because of the pandemic, we're pretty good there. We've made the most of dollars that are available to us, and being able to utilize those to benefit the city and for long-term benefits. So that has also been a good thing for the health of the city. Just want to go over a few things. I can't believe it's been 3 years since the fire. So we've done a lot since then for mitigation, and that's been wow. To work with federal agencies is a whole different ballgame and a great adventure. And we have everybody on the council's been involved, but we really Carrie has spent hours and hours and hours navigating us through that uncharted territory, and we're grateful for what we've been able to do for that. We've had good response to COVID-19. I think by and large, most people in the city are very grateful that we had fiber before that pandemic hit, because up to that point, there were a few places in the city that had good internet, but the rest of us were pretty spotty. And I don't know what everybody's experience was, but I know that my husband and I were paying upwards of $200 a month, and we were getting crummy internet service for that. But that was the best we could get. So anyway, the fiber has been, I think, a blessing to the whole city. So that's a good thing. We did have this kind of catastrophic water line failures, and we've had to replace our water lines, but we've been really, it's been a real good thing. We were able to get excellent financing, and for a project as huge compared to the size of our city as that has been, it has gone fairly smoothly. There are always hiccups, but we are getting new water lines. We are very grateful that part of the bond requirements are that we provide for future upkeep, maintenance, so that we shouldn't ever get to the same spot that we were. The reason we were there is because we were a little city, and I think everybody up to the point where things failed was doing their best. I'm not criticizing past councils and mayors. Everybody really did their best all along the way, but I think we're going to have a good water system, and we're grateful for that. We have, over the last couple of years, created a few committees composed of citizens, and they've been very helpful, and it's been very good to get them engaged. And we had a roads committee that's been working on roads, and a water committee, and we've kind of combined them into public works because so many of our projects dovetail together with roads and water. We have a Parks and Trails committee that has been great, a finance committee that has really helped us out to try and make sure that all the money that we spend is well spent, needs to be spent, it's responsible. We have a transparency committee that has really worked to try and get information out to people so that they can see what we're doing and why. We have great employees. We were able to have a salary study done and found that, found that we were pretty in line in all our salaries. So we were glad to know that we weren't underpaying or overpaying, really. Our employees, they're being paid fair salaries, but they are committed. And honestly, as the mayor and the main administrator, one of my biggest problems with our employees is making them actually report all their hours, because they tend to try to donate too much. We are creating a personnel manual we've never had. We're creating a city policy manual, which is great. So anyway, it's a great city. We have wonderful people that live here. It's beautiful. The nature that surrounds us is healing and powerful, and that is what attracted most of us here, and we're grateful for it. So anything else that you think I need to say about the city? Oh, yes. If you didn't get a chance to come early after the meeting, sorry, do you want to say it? Okay. Make sure you look at around the posters and things that are hanging on the wall. Just talk about the things that we've been doing in the city over the last year. And there's a lot that's happened when a lot of us have been isolated and haven't been able to see what was going on. And then there's some like financial information in the back about budget and those questions, trying to put it in some charts to make some of it a little more understandable and easy to digest for normal humans. Anyway, okay, so let's. I think we'll do the written ones first. So we gave people a chance to submit questions before the meeting tonight. So we're going to answer those questions and then we will take questions from those of you that are here in attendance. And what we'll have you do is if you have a question, we'll have you come up to this mic here so that everybody here in the room can hear, but also we're broadcasting this on Zoom so people watching can hear. And then also we will post it to the city's YouTube page. So people, you can go back and rewatch, or other people that weren't able to attend tonight can find the information on our YouTube page. So I'm just going to start and read the questions. Let's just do these because then that may answer a lot of these questions. So I'm going to do these and then we'll, I think we can get through them pretty quickly. So the first question that I have from somebody said, why is the city wasting money fighting legal battles instead of working to reach a settlement and resolve the problems? Paul, do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
Give the boring questions. So good question. No, the only part I would obviously disagree with in the question is wasting. When a lawsuit is filed, you have to respond. Complaint is a type of lawsuit. So you have to respond. There's no question, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You can try to settle at any point in time in the process, but you have to file an answer and you have to start going through certain procedures on the litigation side. Most of the costs actually, though, are not directly involved with the lawsuit. This is where I may need a little bit of help, but actually most of the costs are associated with getting legal counsel on grandma requests and on different kinds of requests that come outside of grandma that we have to make sure we get it right. Otherwise we could end up with, as a city, with a very large liability. The other problem we have is there's not just, I mean, there's one party that filed the suit, but there's another party involved. And if we can settle with the one, but if we settle under terms that would disrupt the other, then we're going to get a lawsuit from that side. So we really are trying to find a way to meander through it. And hopefully at some point we will sit down and be able to have discussions to try to get it settled. So that is the goal. But up to this point, we've had to expend the money to get the advice we have and to file the answer and take the legal processes.
Because I'm the mayor, I get to say something if I just want to. I would differ. I mean, I would take a little bit of issue with this question is that we are not fighting a legal battle. We are a neutral party in the middle. The city's job is health and safety of our citizens and to make sure that there's a fair playing field between citizens having a difficulty. And we're neutral. But if there's a citizen that's fighting, they have every right. And we will try, and we have tried to reach out, find a way to settle or mediate. And we haven't had any success so far. And we've tried multiple avenues, multiple ways. So that's kind of the answer to that question. Next question is, will the city council and mayor change the practice of not reading statements submitted in writing? If a resident takes the time to write a statement, we want them to be read aloud during the public meeting. The city council uses a lot of time discussing matters ineffectively. We should not spend time on these points while not reading written statements submitted by residents. We want those statements read aloud for the record. I'm going to respond to that because I'm the mayor in charge of setting the agenda and setting those policies. We are having a city council meeting. It's a meeting for the council to meet and discuss with each other and solve city business or do city business. We want to take input from our citizens. If you come to a meeting, then we have a time set aside at the beginning of the meeting that we will allow as a courtesy for citizens to make statements or give us information. If you submit it in writing, it gets distributed to the whole council, but there's no reason to read it aloud in the meeting. It's the city council's meeting. It's not a meeting for the citizens. Does that make sense? So they have the information they need, and we're not going to take time to read those statements aloud. Now, your next mayor may come along and make a different decision, but that's what we've done so far, and that's why. And until it changes. Yes, and they are all included in the minutes of the meeting, so people can read what they are. They're open information, but we're not going to take time out of the meeting to read them because, yes. Okay, yes, so we have, the way our meetings are structured now is that we have a work session at the beginning. And that is pretty free flowing. It has an agenda. It's posted ahead of time. You know what we're going to discuss in the work. The citizens can see what we're going to discuss in the work session. But that's where the council members really talk and discuss and change. And because we're a small city, we don't have staff that make a lot of decisions. The council really has to make a lot of those decisions. And we choose to do most of that in a city council meeting in public, so it's recorded and the citizens can see that whole process. So it's as open as it can be. Then when we finish our work session, we close the work session, we take a little break because we're usually kind of tired so we take a 5-7 minute break. We come back and we hold our city council meeting. That is very formal, closer to Robert's Rules of Order. We don't do any business that's not agendized. So we're not going to take action on something that's not in the agenda. So nobody should be surprised by the city council making a decision. We didn't know they were going to talk about roads. It's on that agenda. So those things are all taken care of in the meeting and very formally. Yeah, no votes happen in a work session. That's all discussion. All the votes, all the action that happens in the formal city council meeting, so that you understand. And the citizen comment period that we give is at the beginning of the formal city council meeting. And it's not a discussion period generally, it's just a time for citizens to make comments so the city council can hear them. Questions should come at other times off, not really in a formal meeting, probably directed to council members. So, all right, we're gonna move on. Next question was, currently the Transparency Committee functions more as a public relations committee that disseminates information, which certainly has its place. However, if the function of a Transparency Committee is to allow a forum for alternative points of view, foster discussion, and to hold city officials accountable, would the mayor and city council be willing to establish such an independent committee? So what I did, here's the policies for our Transparency Committee. And I just want to read you what the philosophy of the Transparency Committee is, because I think the problem with this question is that we've got different people with different expectations of what the committee is. So this is what the philosophy of our Transparency Committee is, and it's part of the public record. Different individuals may define transparency in different ways. This is our meaning of the term. In the past, many residents have felt like there was a wall between them and city operations. They couldn't see what the city did or understand why they did it. Many sent requests to the city for more information, but city personnel lacked the time or the resources to meet those requests. In response, this committee was formed. The job of the Transparency Committee is like cutting a hole in the wall between the city and the residents and installing a window. This will allow the residents to look through the window into the operations of the city, i.e. transparency. And in so doing, will give the residents an understanding of the challenges facing the city and its administrators and the reasons why decisions are made. However, acknowledging what the Transparency Committee is not is just as important as knowing what they are. Confusion may arise if the wrong thing is on the other side of the window. Issues are not on the other side of the window. It is not the committee's job to thoroughly examine every side of every issue facing the city. Residents' preferences or grievances are not on the other side of the window. Although those may be important, the Transparency Committee is not responsible to inform residents of other residents' points of view. Those can be and often are expressed through social media and other venues. In other words, this committee is not intended to be a watchdog group or a group of investigative reporters. By the same token, the Transparency Committee is not a public relations group. They will not try to sway public opinion. They will not attempt to persuade residents into sharing the city's perspective. They will simply prevent issues as clearly as possible, recognizing that some residents will feel positive about the issue and others will not. If the Transparency Committee does more than this, it will be overstepping its bounds and will be pursuing a role that is too overwhelming to fulfill. So in response to the question, first of all, I think our Transparency Committee is doing a good job at what it's defined to do, to try and give you a window into what we're doing and why, and then you can judge the good or the bad. If there is a group of people that want to get together and discuss and have that back and forth, we encourage them to do that, but the city is not going to sponsor that because it will also, if then it's an official role, but then you've got people that are acting independently and it opens up things to a lot of liability and, so that really needs to be a citizen-led effort. So that's my answer to that question. You guys have anything to add? Okay, moving along through the questions. Okay, are candidates, city employees, or officials required to submit conflict of interest statements regarding financial gain or influence? Are new or existing officials or employees required to recuse themselves from voting or lobbying others when conflicts of interest arise? Who made the commercial development assignment to the open space at the bottom of Woodland Hills, and were the bottom of the hill citizens given an opportunity for input and consideration, since any commercial development directly threatens the principles and character of their property and the city of Woodland Hills? Sorry, I have dry mouth, so I'm sounding really mumbly. In 2017, a survey was conducted for all citizens of Woodland Hills. One of the questions was regarding commercial development. The overwhelming majority do not want commercial development. Commercial development disproportionately threatens bottom of the hill citizens, since this is where commercial development has been designated. Is it possible to allow citizens the opportunity to decide if commercial development is allowed and where it is allowed? City officials and candidates continue to make the claim that to reduce property taxes, commercial development is needed. Is this true? Is this a choice? Can citizens decide between commercial development and higher property taxes? If this is a choice, I vote for higher property taxes. Okay, the first thing is, do you want to answer the question about conflict of interest statements and that? And then I'm going to have Bob speak to the commercial development.
Yes, I'm excited to have you,
Carrie,
to
sorry.
see you all here. Carrie Malkovich, council member. Yes, at the beginning of every year, we are required to sign a document that asks us if we have any conflict of interest. At this point, I mean, if we had someone who was a developer or something else, they would probably recuse them. Recuse, yes, I know what I'm saying, themselves of that vote. We have had very few of those on this council who have had to stop their vote on an issue. But yes, we do sign that. It is an important aspect of who we are as citizens.
But also legally, you do not have to recuse yourself. You just have to declare.
You
the
just have to
conflict.
declare the conflict before the vote.
But
So
generally, they.
yeah.
In the city. That's traditional.
Yes, traditionally, we have done that. And the same thing with recusing themselves from voting or lobbying city officials or employees. Again, same answer. Yes, we do. We do make sure that that's known in a public setting, that yes, there is a conflict of interest. It's written and it's verbal. Let's see, is there anything else that's for me on that? Yes, the League of Cities and Towns does training every year for us. There's some, they have some of it we go to in person. They have also, the state has done most of the training online, and we have to certify that we have attended the training. There's training on a lot of different things, open public meeting, transparency, etc. And we, as well as some of our staff, attend those training sessions and sign off on that so that we are aware of what the state statute is, and at the same time, what is required of us. We also each are given a a hard copy of a manual that puts out there what the roles and responsibilities are of each city, and we are required to understand and know that. So I think that's an important part. Bob?
I'm also glad to see everybody here. I just looked online and we have about 30 people that are joining us online. And so we want to recognize them and thank them for making the sacrifice to be part of this and to participate. So I'm answering this question basically because I have been given the assignment on the council to explore economic development within the city. We at the beginning advertised this committee through social media. We reached out to different people. We wanted to get a variety of folks from around the city. We've had some success with that, but not as much as we'd want. And so if there are other people that would like to participate, you're welcome. Number two, the committee is not official. It's still in an exploratory stage. We haven't decided that we're going to do anything. We're exploring what are our options. So the first question is, who made the commercial development assignment to the open space at the bottom of the city of Woodland Hills? That is not officially defined as commercial zoning. There is no commercial zoning right now within the city. However, the city plan that the Planning Commission develops and has to by law about every 5 years, Wayne, that has to be updated. And they include a lot of different things in there. Some of it I would call blue sky, stuff that, you know, we would like to do, but probably can't afford to do it, or it's just not the right time. But we include it in there. They look at the larger planning by MAG, which is an organization, the state-funded organization that looks at transportation. And so we look at that and see how that affects us. And so there is no commercial in the city right now. We as a committee, as a group, study group, are looking at the viability of different things. And we have to be careful when we use the term commercial as to what that really means. Commercial in the context of what we're using does not include retail. We looked at the viability of retail and it just doesn't exist for our city at this time. It may be years before it does. To give you an example as to why it's not viable, for every $1 million in sales, the city would only get $15,000. So to make a significant impact, we would need something like a Costco or a Lowe's or a Home Depot that's having hundreds of millions of dollars in sales to really make an impact where we could lower our tax rate. So it's just not viable. So we are exploring commercial in the sense of business, whether that is a fitness center or that is a business office or something like that. We're exploring that. And so that is one of the reasons why the financial charts that we have were developed, is to look and see what that would really look like and what it would take to make that viable. The interesting thing to note is that, and I may be going on too much, pull my tail if I talk too much. The state forgives the first 45% of your property tax. So you only pay residential property tax on 55% of its assessed tax market value. The first 45% is forgiven. However, if it is commercial, you pay 100%. And so then every commercial property, we would get a lot more income from that. What we found in our study is that in 2020, for every $100,000 of assessed tax value your home has, the city only gets $239. So what does that mean? That means that if you have what we're calling an average size, Avery Valley home in Woodland Hills, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 tax value, the amount of tax that you pay that comes to the city is approximately $1,200. That's all we get. And that the taxes that are assessed against that home are somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,000. So we get a relatively small percentage of that. Then talking about raising property tax, I'm potentially okay with that, but I have a real philosophical problem with that. And that is that I believe that if we're not careful, we will have citizens that have lived here for 20 years or more, that have raised their family here, their kids have gone, they're on a fixed income, and we're going to tax them out of their house to where they no longer can afford it. That is my concern. And I think that that's the kind of city that we want to be. How we solve that, I don't know. There's a lot of different options that we need to explore. And most of those would probably come up in some sort of a public hearing or maybe even a vote. One thought is we could kind of follow a model in California, and that is that somehow we define at some point that a person's property tax, because of certain criteria, is frozen. So we no longer increase their property tax. And then the rest of the community would kind of take on that burden because we want to be an inclusive community. So I think that's answered those questions.
Okay, we are not going to try and be here the whole entire night if we don't have to. So we're going to answer a couple more of these written questions, then we'll take some questions from you. We'll kind of go back and forth because I don't want to. We want to be fair to everybody. So here's a list that somebody sent in a bunch of questions, so we're going to group a couple of them together. I understand water line replacement is being done in phases. How many phases are there? What phase are we on? When do we think this current phase will be complete? When does the next phase begin approximately? Where will that be located? How will it be funded? Dave, do you want to take that?
Sure. So we've called these things phase 1, 2, 3. We've called them A, B, and C. We've called them a bunch of different things. Bottom line is, with this last bunch of water replacement, we essentially were able to do almost everything on the west side of the city, minus Summit Creek. And that was considered phase 1. Phase 2 was kind of going up Maple and then doing some of the roads in and around that area. And we were able to actually do a bunch of that as well. There was a phase called 2+ that we were hopeful to get to. And I don't think we got all of that, although how much did we get, Ted? Yeah, and I'll just say it this way. Ted and Corbett have been miracle workers in all of this, because what they've been able to do is they've been able to we're trying to eke every bit of pipe out of the money we've been given that we possibly can, and doing that while prices are changing. And so we didn't think we were going to get that 1,500 feet, but then at the last minute we were, and because of how we were able to do some of the roads, we were able to get even more done. And so that was what really enabled us to get that 1,500 more feet done. There is a phase 3, but the good news is phase 3 is essentially the Thousand Oaks subdivision, which really doesn't need to be done. It was relatively soon. So anyway, we're not really in a hurry to do phase 3. We're really just trying to finish up phase 2. And we're evaluating, once we get all of this year's done, then we'll kind of take a breath. We'll actually think about it and do some mapping out of what's left. And then we'll put a price tag on that and determine if we can get the money for it.
Thanks. Okay. Okay, but let me add the next question and answer. The next questions were, last winter, there was an avalanche that filled up the debris fence that was put in for mudslide mitigation. Is there an update on the situation up there? And is there any future mitigation work being explored? So you can add to his.
Yes, one thing is, with regards to the water projects is, every city was giving an allocation from the federal government recently for what's called ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, that Congress passed. And we were given, each state was given money, each county and each city all across America. And so it was allocated based on population. We were given $94,088.50. Now, that's for our water project. It was dedicated. We had to go, there were certain things that it had to go to, and that's what we put it to. The state with their money, they allocated $50 million for matching grant. So last week we submitted a grant. We could use that in conjunction with other potential funding. Department of Drinking Water has been very good to work with us in terms of 0% or low interest loans. For phase 2, it is approximately $1 million, or yeah, I think it's 1 million that we, or what is it? What's the number that Drinking Water was going to give us, Ted? $1 million. So what we're asking for in match money in this grant last week was 1.4 million. Utilizing the money that we get from ARPA, as well as this matching fund that would go towards the cost of phase 1. So we will know mid-November if we receive that grant money. And then the second tranche of that money will come to us next year to continue with the water project. So that's just kind of a little background on the financing. So pray, cross your fingers, whatever you can do, that the state sees our need above someone else's, I suppose, and that we're going to continue to lobby the legislature so that they allocate their second tranche of ARPA funding to give more to the municipalities. So that's my update on that. So with regards to avalanche, yes, we had a big avalanche up there. As part of our mitigation project, we put in a debris fence at the top. If any of you have the switchbacks, you saw this huge big fencing that was made out of coils and springs that was put into the bedrock. It was designed not as an avalanche control, but as a mudslide debris fence, and it is designed as such. When that avalanche came down, fortunately for us, that fencing did take a big impact. In fact, it was completely covered in snow and debris. And we weren't sure if it had failed, meaning that if it would still be structurally sound for a debris fence in the future for what it was intended, mudslide. And so this spring, late summer, early fall, as the snow melted up there, the company that had put that in, we paid for that fence, they came and assessed it. And we are responsible when there is an incident to take out that debris, which is a cost to the city. They came and they saw that, and they have a great relationship with the city and with our city engineers. And they offered to clean it for us at no charge. So they did that, and they assessed the strength and the vitality of that fence. They had to do a little bit of adjustments, but it is in place and it is fine. And it is ready to go in case we do have another incident. Future mitigation. I don't know if anyone had a question about past mitigation, but maybe I should give a quick update on that because it entails going into the future. When we had our mitigation originally after the fires, it's hard to believe 3 years ago, we didn't even know if our city would survive. And we all came together in unity and prayer, and we feel very grateful that our city was spared. With that, there's always the fear of what comes next. We were given There was a lot of work done by the federal government and the state to assess the damage that was brought to our mountain. What would that do to our city in the future with potential rains, mudslide, the instability of the slope based on the lack of erosion control, et cetera. There was a lot of damage to our mountain. And so it was decided at that time that we would do some post-fire mitigation. Now, those of you who have worked with the federal government know that their time is slow. We wanted it taken care of quickly. It doesn't necessarily work that way. And so the patience on behalf of ourselves as elected officials and for you as citizens, it was appreciated, but maybe not always understood. We initially, right after the fire, the next legislative session, I went to the legislature. We realized in part of our planning that there would need to be four lots purchased in order for us to do post-fire mitigation, where these flows would come. 2 on Eagle's Nest and 2 on Grizzly that would need to be purchased. So we quickly had an appraisal done of those 4 pieces of property. And I went to the legislature and to appropriations and requested the funds for those. Yeah, I'm going quickly. So we got $650,000 for those properties. By the time that we actually were able to get that money spent to purchase those properties, the private owners had increased their value. And so we couldn't go back to the legislature and request more money. That time period was over. And so the total project was 2.2 million. And we had over $20,000 worth of in-kind donations from residents who worked on that project. And our cost to the city was 140,000, which out of 2.2 million was remarkable. And most of that cost was just the increase in the property cost that came because of the increase in price from the time that we assessed it to the time that it could actually be purchased based on the matching that the federal government gave us. We had to go on their time schedule. So with that, and that was called our watershed, emergency watershed protection with the NRCS. That was part of it. That was the channel work through Grizzly and the park. And our FEMA project was the basin that is on Eagle Nest. The second part that comes 3 to 5 years after that initial phase, they're still assessing that. We're in the planning and environmental phase. That particular part of the project is over by the water tanks, and that's called watershed ops. And that is, again, a debris basin to protect our water source at the tanks and also to prevent another flow. So all of that would take place on city property. We wouldn't need to purchase any property. We're still 2 years out on that. And then we don't know if the city would need to do a match at that time because after this initial phase, it would be classified. Now, if it's a flooding mitigation, it will be covered 100%. If they classified it differently, it would be different, but we will not determine it until the planning has been completed. And that project is determined to be $1.5 to $2 million. So that's kind of the update on future and what we can do to continue to preserve our city from post-fire problems. Long answer, but I know I get calls a lot about the details.
Okay, what we're going to do, because we're trying to move along and we want you to be satisfied when you leave, is I'm going to take questions and have you come up to this mic. In fact, Paul, will you go turn that mic on? So come up to that mic on the stand to ask a question when you're called on. And then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to limit whoever's giving the answer to 2 minutes. Because that's what we will limit you to when you come to our meetings. So I'll give a 30-second warning to whoever's giving the answer and we'll try and, yep, I think it's on. Okay, so let's see. If you have a question, hopefully we've answered some of those questions already. If you have a question, raise your hand and we'll call on you. Come up to the front and ask your question to the mic. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can if you want, but. Okay. Oh, he's just checking the mic. Okay, he doesn't want us. Yes. Aaron Lowe, would you like? Oh, sorry. Okay, Lori, you go first.
Eyes behind me.
Yeah, it's okay. That's just totally fine.
So I have a very non-controversial question, I think. Who is responsible for those gorgeous wildflowers that brought us so much happiness over the summer up at the park? So I can thank them. The bee flowers and the sunflowers.
Flowers, in the flowers that are on Grizzly in those two lots, that was part of our reseeding efforts. So as part of our mitigation, there were Ted and I and Mylan reseeded all of the basin and all of the mitigation properties.
Thank you. We got so much enjoyment out of
Good.
that. That's all.
That's great. Okay, Aaron, you're up.
Okay, so Bob, follow up to your comments about possibly modifying the property tax values. This, if you were to have any fixed cap on that, would that only be the city portion of property taxes? You can't fix Nebo School District or other taxing entities, right? Correct. Okay.
That was awesome. 1 second warning. Okay. I think I saw a couple more hands. Dennis, okay. Will you pull the mic this way a little? Yep. Yeah,
I have a question about the in-kind services. Does the city still want to keep track of hours you do, like?
Absolutely. All
Okay, we can
volunteer
just send
hours.
those to Jody, because I've been
Yes.
putting a lot of time in on brush clearance. Whatever. Okay.
Because yes, brush clearing, we get good matching grant monies for those things too. All right, any other questions here? And then we'll take a couple from our Zoom audience. Brent.
So this is directed to Carrie. Okay. So I was just curious. So I know that mitigation effort is in response to the burn scar. I'm assuming that at some point in the process, it will naturally address itself, right? I mean, I'm just curious because if you're talking a couple of years down the road to the tune of north of $1 million, I mean, is there a point where mitigation project no longer becomes necessary?
Yes, and that's why the federal government divided it into two parts. So when because the fire didn't decimate our city, it was determined at that time, though, through all of the engineering and everything else, that we had immediate needs, and then we had some that could be possible needs. And so it was divided into the emergency watershed protection, which ended up becoming the basin and the channel work. And then this second basin will be a secondary based on that initial research from the beginning. Now, of course, it has to have the perfect storm to have any incident, but we want to be prepared.
Of course.
Again, if it's because there is a potential for another slide over in that area by our water tanks.
And how long into the future can we
Oh,
anticipate?
The project, the one we just finished, which took us 2.5 years to get finished, and this one should be finished started between 2 and 3 more years, and then take another year to finish. Then we would be done with everything with regards to the project. And it is determined to be built to last at least 20 to 25 years.
And actually, what I was meaning is how long is the danger present? How long is
Oh,
the danger from the fire scar?
20
present?
to 25 years.
Oh, okay.
That's what they say,
Okay.
is
Thank you.
that it could be potential, because the smaller brush will grow back, but the larger trees take some time.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right, Cheryl, do you have your hand?
Sorry, I just didn't know about that we were supposed to be letting you know the time that we spent doing clearing
Oh.
brush on our own properties. I just wasn't aware of that.
Okay, yeah, good. All right, Jody, have you got people with their Zoom hands raised? Okay, so 2 more questions here, or I can do more of the written ones if nobody here has anything pressing, okay? It's so fun to see you all again. Oh my goodness, I've missed you. I don't know yet. I'm gonna try and I'm gonna try and go to questions that I feel like we hear a lot so that we can, okay. And this came from a couple of places in different forms, but basically the same question. What plans does the city have to address the drainage and runoff problems that we have? Many of our culverts are filled with dirt and rocks from recent construction. Some of the roads like Broad Hollow are particularly bad for people who live at the bottom of them. Rocks, gravel, and water, along with erosion from the runoff waters, are all problems associated with the lack of proper drainage. Dave or Paul, do one of you want to?
We'll have some input on this. Really good question, and it's morphing. We're trying to figure that out. We've got, on the one hand, I mean, anybody can go out on well, it's on a city easement, so we need to check, but there can be citizen involvement in helping to fix the problem. At the same time, we want to be very careful with that so nobody gets hurt. We have the right equipment. We don't hurt any city infrastructure. So we're trying to figure that out, trying to identify the areas that are particularly bad. Right in front of my house, for example, any of you come up Willow Reed, right there, when we get any of these storms, it's just a big old wash that comes down, and they're pretty good about cleaning it up, but we've got 2 or 3 days of rocks flying as we drive. So we've started organizing our neighborhood some efforts to try to figure out what we can do, but the city needs to figure out its part first. And so it's evolving, progressing. Any input you can give us would be great to have, but we are looking for a solution.
And the only piece all that is, so those last rainstorms were terrible. And they hit before we actually have the road work done. So the first point that I'll make is the road work's not done. The company that was doing it is still going to come back and kind of fix those side drainages. And when I say fix, they're going to restore them to the state that they were before the construction took place. Which, to be blunt, they weren't in great shape before the construction took place. So they're going to do a little bit, but not a lot. So second point is we've asked the Public Works Committee to take a look at this and then to prioritize which roads we're going to do. And then we're just going to start scheduling that work to clear those out and make the drainages better, because we can't have rocks going across the roads every time we get a rainstorm.
You got 12 seconds.
All right, I'll talk really fast. So there is a website that we can all go to. I thought it was going to be posted there. I don't see it right now, but anyhow. Oh, it's in the newsletter. So that's a website you can go and report anything that you believe on your property, anyone's property, is not what it was before the mitigation. I'm sorry, before the road work was begun. So that's where you can let everybody know, hey, I had this, I had it cleaned out, now it's not. And that list will be kept and addressed down the road as they finish these phases. So make sure you do that. I'm going to be doing it.
Okay. One more. This one I'm going to answer. It just said, why did the city refuse to hold one of these town hall meetings when residents were calling for one, when there were so many issues with city laws? Why did the mayor and city council not listen to the people then and hold a town hall meeting, but decided to hold one now without a real reason? We traditionally hold a town hall meeting in September, and it's basically to give you guys a sense of the state of the city, all of our citizens. So that's why we're doing it now. We didn't hold one earlier, when we were trying to do our codification. There were some people that really wanted to hold some town hall meetings about that. But we were in the middle of the pandemic, and most of the citizens that were requesting town hall meetings were also insisting that they had to be live in person and that we couldn't do them electronically or through Zoom. And at that time, we weren't holding any meetings like that. And so that's why we didn't do it then. That's why we're doing it now. This is a traditional meeting we missed last year. We're glad to have you back. And so that's the answer to that question. Jody. Wait. Yeah.
It's okay. We can repeat the question.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
How many committees are there that the city needs volunteers? Is that info posted anywhere?
Okay, how many committees does the city need volunteers for? And is that information posted anywhere? On the website I think There are six, yes, there are six committees. Some of them are more formal than the others, some than others. So, but that information is there, and if somebody has an interest, call the city offices, let us know. We'll get people involved where we can. There are, like the finance committee, we really can't have 23 people on the finance committee, or you don't, it's just too big. Then we would experience death by committee. So, yes, so some of the committees are more free flowing and can involve more people. But we try to rotate, well, we've just started this, but we will try to rotate and get as many people involved as we can in ways that we can. Jody, next question. Okay, we'll meet the candidates night, be an open forum at City Hall in person. It will be here. It will be in person. It will also be broadcast through Zoom, won't it? Yes, and there will be, people will be, I don't know what you mean by open forum. There will be questions submitted ahead of time. We've got Kurt Bramble coming from the state of Utah to moderate, and he will do the mayoral candidates ask questions there for a little while, and then have the council candidates field questions. So that's kind of how that will be handled. If you have questions or interests, those need to be submitted ahead of time, and that's how they will do it. And Jody, next question. Okay, anybody else here in person that has another question? Okay, I'll answer the next question here. Will the city council change our city laws to allow for more time for public comments during public hearings? There's no state statute that prevents a city from allowing residents more time to comment during a public hearing. At recent public hearings, it was very frustrating to have the planning commission chair and mayor sit with a watch and time our input and limit us to 2 minutes and never really respond to our questions. We need more time to speak during public hearings. Those meetings, public hearings are for us to hear from the public, but they're not discussions back and forth. It's not a question and answer session. It's really designed for you to come and give information to the body, which is the planning commission or the city council, for them to use as they make their decisions and hold their discussions. One of the reasons that the time is limited is because, if 20 people show up and want to make comments, and that does happen, and everybody has 2 minutes, that's 40 minutes of comment. And that's if the one person starts commenting the second the last person's done. And generally, if we can tell that you're finishing up, we don't cut you off before your last sentence and a half. But some people, and I'm guilty of this myself, you get nervous and you just start rambling. And so then questions go on and on and on. And so we have to have some sort of way to keep the meeting moving. And the person making the comment is very passionate about the comment as well, is understandable, but everybody in the room is not necessarily want to hear their 7-minute comment. And so it's just very difficult. We try to give that. And if you come ready and prepared, you can generally say what you want in 2 minutes.
The other thing I would say is sometimes we kind of get in a habit where the meeting is the only way that we can communicate, which is kind of silly. Because I have my phone number both on the city website and every email that I ever send out. And you're welcome to call me. You're welcome to call any of us, really. So a public comment, which we definitely, I want to hear the public's comments. And I am willing to spend, and I have spent hours with people. In a meeting, it's really hard to spend hours on one topic, although sometimes we do. But my suggestion is, if you want to talk to the council or you want to have an issue brought up, don't wait for a meeting. There's no need to wait.
Good point. Thanks, Dave. Okay, here's another question. What can we do to slow traffic on Woodland Hills Drive and other main arteries? I know the city council recently proposed, pardon me, Some radar feedback signs for Summit Creek. I agree that they need them, but so do several other roads in the city, especially Woodland Hills Drive below the city center. What can we do to get signs for some of those critical areas as well?
So it so happens at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm meeting with citizens over in the Summit Creek Clubhouse. They are interested in giving our council input and ideas that they have over there for slowing traffic down on their road. And frankly, I think whatever I hear from them, we ought to consider on Woodland Hills Drive as well. So I will come back to the council with a report of ideas they have. It might not be the last meeting, but at least it's a start to try and get some ideas from the citizens themselves to try and slow our traffic down. Yeah, Janet. Well, Janet's referring to a good idea, I think, and that's like you get down there to Salem and you head over to Chevron, you have this sign that blinks at you if you're going 26. You know, it's just a solar speed limit notification sign, if you're thinking of that one, Janet. Those can't be that expensive, and we ought to have those in our city. Well, I agree that they seem like a fix that might help.
Well, it wasn't my idea. We have a resident who is a traffic engineer. And I've been concerned for a long time about the speed and safety along Summit Creek. And so I initially said, hey, let's reduce the speed limit. I got feedback from various council members. And so I talked to our resident traffic engineer. And he said, reducing the speed doesn't work. Studies show that that really what they do in setting the speed limit is 85% of the speed is what they then target the speed at, unless it's something else, some other existing condition. And so he suggested a driver feedback mechanism, which is the speed limit sign with the flashing how fast you're going. He says those are the most effective. He said that stop signs don't work. And so we're looking at those as an option, and they're about $2,500 a piece.
Yeah, it does. So, but we have different places in the city with different problems, and some of them, those traffic calming just itself is going to work. Some places it will be better for us to put a sign like that in that also collects data. So some of them don't collect data, some do. And the collection of data is not going to collect your license plate number or who you are, but it will collect how many people are going by at what speed and those sorts of things. Yeah, and what times of the day. And so there are some places that it is going to be more worth it for us to spend a little more money for a data collection thing. So that's one of the things that we're evaluating, is where is the data collection going to be more valuable than just a traffic calmer? Because if we're going to spend, you know, if you're debating between $2,500 and $3,300, you don't want to spend $2,500 and then turn around a couple of years later and 33. I mean, you know, anyway, so that's one of the things that we're doing, is trying to decide where do we just need the feedback and where do we also want to collect data to help us solve further problems in the future. Okay, here's the next question. In my experience and observations, there are numerous nuisance dogs in Woodland Hills. Now you have to know that generally when I'm just going to stop and make an aside. Generally, when we do our general plan updates in our city, you would think that the city is completely overrun by dogs and that are running free and dogs that bark all night. And because that is the largest complaint we get in the city, which really is kind of wonderful that that's the worst thing we really deal with. But anyway, but not to minimize the problem, because it can be a real problem. Why does it seem like there's no consequence for dogs who roam freely, kill chickens and small pets, and upset small children? So Doral, do you want to talk about that? I can give a quick answer, I think. I'll time myself. Let me time myself. the- Well, so our sheriff's department enforces that. We as a city, because that's kind of, it's, yes. And so, first of all, as a citizen, you really need to call dispatch, the sheriff's office, or, dispatch. Well, you're right, but not the city offices, because we don't enforce that. The sheriff's office enforces it. But then also because of that, I mean, it's a police enforcement thing, a law enforcement thing. And so there are some complexities to how they enforce, and they do, but sometimes it takes multiple. Yes, and so they do a very good job of working with us on that, but it's very difficult when they don't get the reports. So very often neighbors get very frustrated and talk to each other a whole lot, but not to the sheriff's department, the sheriff's office. So it's important that you make those calls, not because you're hateful or you want your neighbor strung up, but they just need a record, because if sometimes if things escalate and they have a record, they can move a lot more quickly to solve a real problem. And our sheriff's department is awesome when you talk to them about, this is a problem, we need you to create a record, but we don't want you to run over and fling our neighbor to the ground and arrest them. But we've got to we can see a potential problem building. So does that make sense to those of you here? Am I making sense, or am I, Well, true. So the comment here, if you couldn't hear, is maybe better to call the sheriff than to shame them on the Facebook page. Also, I mean, often a lot of these problems you can talk to your neighbor about and solve before you involve somebody else. Absolutely.
Can I also say, we can police ourselves.
Yes, yes.
I mean, if you happen to have a dog, by the way, we live on a mountain. Sound travels. Okay, sound travels a lot. So if you happen to hear your dog barking, bring them into your garage or police yourself. There's no need for us to I love our sheriff and he is great, but we don't need to call the sheriff unless it's an injury. And please don't generally take it out on the dog. It's usually not the dog's fault. But if there's been an injury, then please do call the sheriff, because at that point we have to have a record so that we can take care of the problem the right way. But as far as barking and all that other stuff, let's police ourselves. I mean, that's what our city should be about.
Well, and honestly, often dogs bark when their owners are gone. And so you may have a dog next to you that barks hours and hours and hours, and the owner's never there to hear it. So let them know in a nice way, because often they will solve it.
I'll just add two quick stories. I had two neighbors, one whose dog, when they would leave, would bark, bark, bark all the time. And so we went to them as a neighbor and said, what can we do? Their dog happened to like classical music. And so when their dog was barking, I would open my window or door and play classical music out the door, and it would calm the dog down. That's working with your neighbor. The other neighbor across the way had livestock. There were dogs that attacked those livestock and killed them. That was an issue for the sheriff's department. It was because they reported it. They were able to identify that these dogs had done that in the past for other areas of the city. And so it was important that that was taken care of in the proper authority so that something could be done about it. So two different incidents, two neighbors, different methods, but take it seriously if there is infractions that are causing harm to a child or to other animals. That needs to be reported.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Come on up. Let's hear.
Hello, I'm Cody Chamberlain. I'm running for city council. vote for Cody. Uh, Sorry, oh, sorry, okay. No, so first off, I work with a city planner who I think could help us with our roads, who some of you have met. And secondly, I was wondering about sidewalks. If we talked about doing walks down Woodland Hills Drive. Never mind, I forget it, just forget it.
The answer is yes. Did we like it? No. So, now, but we have talked about, well, Okay, it's off, so here I go. It's out of line.
Batteries dead?
No.
I just turned it off. Oh, I muted it.
My husband muted us.
There you go. I'll hold that.
Holy cow. Well, now this one's muted. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, those discussions about a million different things, sidewalks, trails, all that. That's what a city council does. And we have those discussions all the time. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. As the city expands, as we move into different areas, different topographies, different everything, you have to start making different decisions, or at least evaluating the decisions, I think is a better way of putting it. But all of our surveys, and not only our surveys, but at least my personal gut feeling is people move to Woodland Hills because they like how rural it is. It feels rural. So we're trying to do our very best to maintain that feel and still handle people's safety and concern for, traffic. And as we get a little more dense housing, then maybe we do some sidewalks, but we limit it to certain places.
Yeah, down at the bottom of the Summit Creek Drive, the new Four Seasons development does have some sidewalks. What? Yeah. Right. Well, and what we find out, okay, let me just give you a little quick thing also. Most places with sidewalks also have curb and gutter, right? As we were doing Woodland Hills Drive, we put this curbing in, but because we don't have raised curbing, then what happens is the water goes down around underneath and then erodes under the road. So to put that curbing in on the side, then we had to, it is more than twice as deep as the road. So sidewalks are a kind of a different animal for us up here. And so sidewalks, trails, but that's a constant ongoing discussion, and it should be, it should continue to be. Yes.
It's on. All right. I'm Brad Krepfel. I'm a relatively new resident here. I've only been here about 3 months. And one of the things that I keep seeing is a reoccurring issue that keeps coming up on Facebook, talking with neighbors as I meet people. And basically at the beginning of the meeting, you addressed the health of the city and you said it was positive, but yet a reoccurring response to city issues and city progression is the lack of funding and resources. So I'd just like to know how you'd address that contradiction.
Well, we are a small city with not a lot of money. So what we generally have been is a city where we are very reliant. So we have a street sweeper now that goes out and cleans up after major storms, but most people go out and clean the street in front of their own house. And so a lot of the things that we do, we don't have a lot of money. And often what happens is long-term residents are taking care of these things themselves. We have new people, new residents that come, and they've been somewhere where those things have always been taken care of for them. And so it's a constant balancing act between deciding how much our city is going to provide and how much our residents are going to do for themselves. And that is part of it. And Paul?
Can I add real quick to the self-reliance? As a new member to the city, that expectation of self-reliance doesn't exist anywhere that I'm aware of, that I could come in. I'm more than willing to volunteer some of my time to better my community in terms of volunteering with different committees and things of that front, but also maybe a better self-expectation of that self-reliance and ways that we can contribute to the overall community or block, whatever that may be. I think that more of that guidance needs to be provided.
So the other thing I would add to that is we leverage the heck out of everything. We look for opportunities to get matching funds because we do have limited resources that way. I mean, the fact that we've been able to do the water and the roads, it really is a testament to some of the people on the council here that went to bat to find 0% interest loans and grants and yeah. I mean, committees have been awesome. I mean, really, it's we have to leverage. Like we had an analysis where we looked and said we could see that double-digit increases in construction prices had occurred for 3 years in a row. So we're thinking, my heavens, if we do this in 4 or 5 year stages, by the time we get to the end, it's going to cost us 3 times what it did at the beginning. And so we were able to go out and get some bond money and pay it all up front. Now we have payments that are regular, that don't go up with the increase in construction price. So we just had to kind of figure that out. So we leverage the heck out of everything we possibly can because we kind of realize where we're at on things. So, and then make sure we write down his name because we're going to.
And you know what? Okay, so also to address your question, you know what? It takes a lot of, interestingly, it takes a lot of man hours to manage volunteers. And we don't have much staff. They're busy doing other things usually, but we have a new volunteer who has volunteered to manage volunteers. So we're going to see how that may work.
This is going to put some of our city staff on notice because they mentioned to me that they were looking at putting together a volunteer opportunity thing on the city website where, for instance, someone would take the assignment to go to the park every other week, run the sprinklers, see if any sprinklers are broken. If it's an easy fix, they'd fix it. If it's a more complex fix, they would share that with the city staff. And so we're hoping that we're going to have a big, long list of those kinds of things that are self-controlled, self-initiated, that people can just take care of.
And honestly, that's something that is easier when you're smaller and becomes more difficult as you become bigger. So it's becoming more complex and difficult, but we have citizens that are absolutely interested and willing. It's just trying to figure out who match everybody up to the right spot. Okay. Yes, Jody's got another question. Okay.
The first one is, the resident has written on the community Facebook page on several occasions that after several efforts to contact city employees, city council members, and the mayor about things that are important to him, he receives no reply. Without getting into personal issues, can you explain why this happens?
Okay.
Yes.
Can you kind of repeat the question?
Yes, it's talking about questions on the Facebook page and why the city employees or council don't always reply. And the easy answer or the quick answer to that is that we do not pay our city employees to manage Facebook, to look at Facebook during the day, during their working hours. That is not their job. Taxpayer dollars are more important to us than social media posts. That being said, almost every question that is put on there can be answered if you dial the phone number of the city. And so during the workday, 801-423-1962, you can call anytime. And if you don't get an answer, you can leave a message and they will reply. Now, again, if you feel like you have not had that answer that you want, all of our phone numbers are on the website. And we try to answer every question that comes around. I get a call, a text, or an email every day, and I'm sure the same is with the rest of the council. And we try to answer to the best of our ability. Sometimes you send us a statement that just says, I'm mad. There's no question there. we do try to respond one way or the other. If there is a question that we can answer, we answer. If there is a question that we don't know the answer, we contact one of the rest of us who may be over that area, or the staff or the mayor, and put your question forward for them to answer. If you have not been receiving any answers or feel that things have not been taken care of in a right way, please call the city staff. Don't post it on the Facebook page, because we have asked them not to monitor that page.
And
I don't monitor Facebook. except
Yeah.
Once every other week. And so if you want me to answer you, don't put it on.
Bob says he only looks at Facebook every other week, so don't put questions for him on there. Also, I'd just like to say that we love this city and we serve the city faithfully as we can. And we're very different. I'm amazed at how different the council members are. But we're humans and we're volunteering part-time. And sometimes our balls drop, and they are better than I am. Sometimes I look over in the corner of my room and I see a bunch of balls on the floor and I go, oh, I just dropped them. So just know sometimes we're just not perfect. We're doing our best. So, and we'll try and get to your questions.
Yeah, whoever submitted that question, call me after this meeting and I'd be happy to talk to you.
He will. He will. He will. Okay, Jody, next question.
A great family on Spring Drive asked about a small sidewalk on one side of the road.
A great family on Spring Drive asked about a small sidewalk on one side of the road. Oh, can this be done? Yeah, East Spring, West Spring, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, they can do one on their own property.
But not on the not on the city easement.
No.
Not on the city easement at this point, but it's something that you could, I mean, you can keep asking, because as we just said, this council has these discussions often, right? And as the city changes and things change, then things will change, so.
You need more detail than that. Yeah, things can change, but let's talk about what that means. So that would change our road and construction standards, which we do have. So we have specific standards on each road, depending upon what the area of the road is, whether it's an artery, a collector, whatever. So there's road standards, and none of those road standards currently have any criteria for a sidewalk, with the exception of Four Seasons. So in Woodland Hills, we don't have any, so we'd have to build that if that's what was decided that the city wanted.
See, he's so good. He's better at answering questions than me. All right, Jody, one more.
Residents are responsible for insulating their water meter. Why wasn't the contractor responsible for insulating after they ripped all of our previous work out?
Okay, residents are responsible for insulating their water meters. Why wasn't the contractor responsible after they ripped all their residents' previous work out?
Is this, are we talking about
Are you talking about the water repair contractor?
this may be one of those situations where they're waiting. So they're going to finish the roads, then they're going to go through and restore. Corbett, you're shaking your head no.
It will be the homeowner's responsibility to put that.
Will it be the homeowners if it's, so it's not, so that won't be restored, just up to the property line?
No, they're talking about the water.
Mhm.
So the water meter, you have a-
But if you did, and they restored it.
Because,
Maybe Corbett, maybe you could answer that?
yeah, Corbett,
Corbett, can you answer that for us?
Well, let's check into that.
Yeah.
Let's check into that. This is a good question. We'll check into it. Right. Okay. So somebody here in the meeting, if you can't hear, said that we need to let people know if they need to fix that because winter's coming. And so if that is going to be homeowner's responsibility, we will get that information out. Ken? Mike? That is a good question. Thanks for asking.
issue. Our meter is, got all the bits and pieces of what was there are still laying around. And I've looked at a few other neighbors and some of them have something really finished nicely. And I've got the big iron thing, collar around it, thrown off to the edge. And anyway, I don't know if I can even get into there to see if I can take care of stuffing anything down in there. It's different than it was. Narrower, I'm not sure if it's narrower. I have no idea. I had a big hole that I could stuff down there with insulation and now the insulation was thrown out and all the bits and pieces are thrown out. And as far as I know, they're done.
Okay. Yes. And there is a place on, Ted, did you want to comment to that? The contractor's not complete yet. Okay, so the water people came in and did water lines. The roads are gonna come in and fix, do the roads, and then the water contractor will come back and do repairs, so they don't get destroyed when the roads go in. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Oh, so they're not working it, okay. Okay. Okay, and there is a place on the website to put those requests and concerns, and the newsletter went out today that gives the link to do that. So put those questions and concerns on there. They're keeping track. We're going to try and follow up on all those things. But yeah, so the water contractor doesn't want to be working over the top of the road contractor at the same time. So it's a complicated moving parts thing, but we don't want to let those balls drop. So go on the website, put your concerns there, and we will try and follow up on all this. Okay, more questions here in the room? Jody, you got anything? Okay, I've got one more that we're going to do at least from here. I will read it and then try to address it as well as we can. This one said, I spent 2 months of my summer last year going door to door to talk to Woodland Hills residents about the referendum to recall the law in which you, our city council, had decided to pass all city ordinances for codification sight unseen. That decision caused great distrust among the citizens. It was found that some changes had been snuck into our zoning ordinances without having been presented to the people. Was it ever determined who had made the unlawful changes and who authorized those changes? I would love for them to come and work in my yard for a couple months to make up for my time spent trying to get things done honestly and correctly. So first of all, I would just like to say I'm sort of disappointed in the tone of that question. But I will address a couple of things. First of all, it is routine and legal and appropriate for a city when they're going through codification process to make changes to ordinances where they can see there are problems or things need to be cleaned up. And those things are all posted as part of the codification before it gets approved. Now, we had some issues that were of larger concern to some of our citizens than we realized as a council would be. So some of the citizens got upset about some changes that were going to be done in the codification. And they had every right to be concerned. When those concerns came to the council, we pulled those things out of the routine codification and decided to address those things individually so that they wouldn't all be part of a, big bill omnibus. And so the council did that. Legally, there was nothing wrong with what the council was previously doing, but in response to you, our citizens, we pulled those things out and we're handling them separately. So there was no intention to sneak anything. And there was nothing illegal done or attempted to be done. But there were some disagreements about what was done and why and how. And those things are good. And those debates are good to hold. I mean, those discussions are good. And as a council, technically, the council could have just kept going and doing whatever, but when they initially saw some of the concerns, they pulled a lot of those things out. Then there was some, back and forth, and not all of it was positive either way. But we, working through those things. So the answer basically to that question is that there's not an investigation to see who snuck something in, because nobody snuck anything in. It was pretty routine, but sometimes we just don't anticipate fully the concerns that citizens have. Sadly, I often assume everyone agrees with me. And sometimes I'm surprised to find out that everybody doesn't always agree with me. And so sometimes, a council gets together and they start making decisions, and they're doing their best to represent you. They're doing their best to represent you. And then sometimes we're surprised to find out people are more concerned about something, or sometimes we're surprised that we think something's going to be a really big deal, and we find out the citizens really don't care. So it goes both ways, and we try to be responsive, but sometimes we're surprised, and it takes a minute, and we reorient and keep going. So that's my response to that question. Did any of you want to answer that any differently, or add something, or correct me or disagree? But I can't imagine why, because I think everybody would always agree. Oh, Bob says he doesn't want to answer because he thinks that the tone was not kind. Dave said he would more. He said the person asking the question has a really pretty yard, and he would be happy to go work in their yard. Well, I can tell you that some of it has to do with scouts and relieving themselves and places for years early on. Here's another question that I will just answer because it's quick. Is there currently an active lawsuit working its way through the court system brought by a private citizen against the city? If so, what court is adjudicating the suit, and what's the docket or case number? If not, will the money be set aside in the next budget to be returned to the taxpayer if the suit is settled or mediated successfully out of court? So there are 3 current actions initiated by the same litigant. Is that okay? One was an appeal filed on August 8th, and then these are all 3 in the 4th District Court, and we have the numbers. I'm not going to read them to you, but if you want them, we can give you the numbers of and the case numbers. And then there was an action filed on August 10th of this year and August 20th of this year. So that's the answer to that.
So I just want to touch on the part of that question that asked if the money would be returned to the citizens if it was not spent or if things were settled. So there's really 2 parts of this, but one's just a purely budget question. So the answer is, just because you budget something doesn't mean you spend it. So yes, as a city, we did budget for so for potential legal action. We have to budget for it. But if that could be solved and it was not necessary for us to use those funds, then since the funds never get spent, they're never really out of our money. So yes, then it essentially gets carried over until the end of the year, and then we do this reconciliation process, and generally we end up putting that money in savings, and everything's good. Now, one other aspect of that that's really important is at least some of these actions are being handled or at least paid for by our insurance. The city has insurance, and so some of the actions are being paid for by that. I have to be careful in saying that because then you're going to go away going, oh, great, doesn't cost the city anything. Yeah, the actual time in court in front of the judge with our lawyer in that moment doesn't cost the city anything. But as any lawyer will know, or anyone who's been a party to a legal action knows, 90% of the work happens outside the courtroom, and that is costing the city money. And so, just so you know, the actual court costs that are taking place as a result of those 3 actions are covered by the insurance, but it's all the other time that is having to be spent that is costing the city a significant sum.
Well, and the attorneys that are handling the case through our insurance are not the same attorneys that we use for our regular things. So those people have to communicate with each other too, and that costs money. Also, to the question of will that money be refunded to the taxpayers? No, but it does go into savings, which can potentially and often does reduce what we're going to need the next year. And then just to answer a question that hasn't been asked but tonight, but I know is a question that has come up, is that we have in our budget, the city budget, there's what's called a fund balance. And we have taken steps along the road, and we're getting better and better in our budgetary process to, instead of leaving kind of all that money in one big savings account, we have created accounts that are specific to capital projects that need to be done. And so we're taking money out of what is called the fund balance, which is basically the big bank account. So it looks like we're rating that money, but we're often moving it to other savings accounts that are specifically delineated for specific projects. So instead of having one fund that is got money that we can use for roads or for fire trucks or for replacing or repainting the city building when it needs to be done, we're creating separate funds for those things and that are dedicated to those specific things. So we're taking it out of the big savings account, but we're moving it to small savings account. So a lot of them, if you're looking at the city budget, it may look like we're taking a lot of money out of the fund balance, but a lot of it is just being moved to other savings spots that are dedicated to specific things. Does that make sense? Because that question has come in. Janet? Okay, yes, she said the Transparency Committee has created a video that explains that very well. Thank you. You're right. Other questions here tonight? Wayne?
I hope I don't get shot here tonight, but my
In the back
perception
or
is
from us?
there's a proliferation of deer. I know we've talked about this a number of times, but I think we need to get serious about maybe really considering a controlled hunt, at least one time, and see the effect of that. Maybe have DWR come in and help us in an assessment to see if it's just my perception or if there really is a lot out there. But we continue to have accidents here in the city, and not that we won't have many more if we do limit the deer population. But I think it's getting to a point where we really need to do something about it.
Okay, we have conferred with them before, and they have told us that our estimation of the over numbers of deer is inaccurate, but that's been a few years. So I think it would be worth revisiting with DNR about that. Bob, did you have a comment?
I agree. We have a citizen that has volunteered, that has expertise in this area to do those assessments for us. His name is Randy Larson. He's a professor at BYU. He does all of this kind of stuff with DWR. He knows them well. And if we want one done, all we have to do is ask him, and he will initiate the process. So we have a mechanism to do that. We just have not initiated it at this point.
I just have to say this. Or you could consider that, this is what I tell my kids, that we call that food storage in Woodland Hills.
You can get your tongue out of your cheek, Dave, now. Ben. You guys, this is really fun. Thanks for coming and participating.
Are you done? No. I'm Ben Hilliard. I've loved everything we've talked about with all the saving of money and treating funds as sacred as possible. I'm wondering, have we talked a lot about generating revenue? I've spoke with the sheriff, and he says one of the things a lot of cities do is like traffic school. I don't know if we've thought about doing a traffic school, because that is able to then generate funds for us that may pay for the traffic alert signs, and potentially even maybe the incurred cost if we say partner with Elkridge to just share the sheriff between the two of us instead of all the different places that we do, so that they're closer in case we need them on an emergency. But have we talked much about revenue generating opportunities?
Yes and no. We haven't talked about that one, but yes, we've talked about a lot of different revenue generating, and some have worked and some haven't, and some die in the discussion, and but we're open and love any suggestions and all suggestions. Janet?
No, I just keep yelling from my seat. Carrie, tell us about Amazon and the money. I heard you talk about how that's generated some funds for the city.
And we're about to get in a state dogfight over it.
So the way sales tax is generated, it's point of sale. And so it may not be for larger items, but for things that are delivered to your home, like Amazon packages that are now taxed. That came through a Supreme Court ruling a few years ago. And so our state was able to adopt that. We do get a portion of that sales tax that comes to our city. If I believe, Chris, was that about 50,000 last year? Over 200,000 that we received, because you are very good at ordering online. So continue to do so. Yes, our wholesale tax. So part of that is generated because you shop in Salem and Spanish Fork, and the state does a geographic boundary, and we get a certain percentage of the sales tax that is generated in other cities. They get a larger portion. The portion that we get an increase in is ones that are point of sale, meaning it is delivered in Woodland Hills, your packages. So yes, that makes a difference.
So right now, Chris, so if you go to Spanish Fork and you buy something and you pay sales tax, then Spanish Fork keeps a percentage of that, 100%. Well, what is it, 60% of it? And then so they keep whatever the percentage is. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but it's like 40 or 50%. They keep that whole thing. Then the rest of it goes into a state fund, and all those sales taxes like that go into the state fund. And then that is all distributed across the state by population. So we get a portion of all the sales tax that get paid over through the whole state, a little bit. But we don't get any of those big like clump, if you go, because we don't have any retail. But things like Amazon, they determine that the point of sale is the home that it's delivered to. So if you order those things, then we get that 50% or whatever. Our city gets that. Plus, then we get our little piece of the pot that goes to the whole. So that's what we're talking about. If all your online ordering and stuff, it's been a boon to our city a little bit, a good little boon. But they're about to have a dogfight in the state, because now the big cities are losing some sales tax because people aren't shopping in their stores, they're shopping online. So now they want us to decide how money is allocated. And so we've got, yeah, we're actively trying to keep the formula that we have now. And we want it to be fair. I mean, in fairness, Spanish Fork has to pay for a lot of infrastructure to maintain those stores that we shop. So they do need a portion of that money more than we may to just keep those sticks and brick stores up and running and to have the right traffic lights and add traffic lanes for, so we want it to be fair, but we want it to be fair. Right?
Quite frankly, COVID's been good to us.
Yeah. Not to minimize some families in the city that have suffered a little, or a lot for that family. We as a city have fared very well in a lot of ways through this pandemic. Brent?
I would just add, I mean, we should all write our elected representatives.
Okay.
That bill.
Okay, Brent said that we should let our elected representatives know how we feel about that.
And of course, I talked to both of them already and have given my input. It hasn't been formulated into a bill. It's just being discussed. But if that happens to become a bill, I will let you know right away and post that information so that we can let our voice be heard in that. So far, they have both pledged to vote against it. And I hope that is true as it progresses, or if it dies. Next week, the league will be meeting with the Senate President and the Speaker of the House to let them know that cities are not in favor of this and to see what we can do to maybe mitigate it so it doesn't progress into a bill.
And just so you know, our representatives, our local representative to the House and our senator are very responsive to our city. They, by and large, they listen. And we had something a few months ago that went through the Senate that was bad for little cities. I wish I could remember right now what it was. I can't remember, but it got through the Senate. And then it was up in the House, and I sent texts to our representative, but also to the senator. And our senator came back and said, I voted for that. And I said, it's horrible. And I told him why I thought it was horrible. I can't believe you did that. And so then he went and read it and really figured, I'm not attacking him because they have huge volumes of stuff they're doing every time. And they're doing their best. But he went back and read it and came back and said, it is bad. So he also was contacting our representative and saying, I screwed up on my vote, don't screw up on yours. And so anyway, the House didn't pass it. So it didn't pass. And I'm sure it's going to come up again. I'm trying to remember what it was. Do you remember? But anyway, the point is they're good. They're responsive to us. When I communicate with them, they respond well. They pay attention to our needs. So it's good for you to know that. And we may not always agree with what they do. And they are representing more than just Woodland Hills, but they are responsive. And it's kind of good to know that. Jody.
Question from Zoom. There are a lot of dead trees in the city. How is the city going to deal with it?
Okay, there are a lot of dead trees in the city. How's the city going to deal with it?
Yeah.
If they're on your property, we would like you to have first dibs and take care of them. We do have grant money, and we are able to clean a lot of that deadfall. We are taking applications for a 50-50 match on some of the grant monies that we have. So see me if you're interested in that, and we'll talk. We are looking to spend that grant money in the areas of the city where it will do the most good fire-wise. And gullies, right-of-ways, there are things we're focused on primarily, but we want all interested parties to contact us. And you're right, there is a lot of dead wood that needs to come out of our city. And we take a lot out every summer and spring with your help. It's been very successful with the chipping program, so. Well, at this point, yes. So it is a very, very good program, and you've really followed through on the chipping side of it. And we hope to continue that.
Come on up.
Alan Wakefield, just a quick comment related to that issue. Several years ago, you brought in the big green dumpsters.
Mhm.
I thought that was a really good thing. I really appreciated it. If you could do it again, if it was, you determined it was wise to at that time, and it still is, I would encourage it again next year.
Great, Doral.
I'm standing up for that one. Thank you, Alan. Those dumpsters were the best ideas in the fall when we have highest fire danger right now, like right now. We can put them out like we did before. And if we have a crisis like a fire, we can have them come and pick them up immediately. It's not like having the chipping piles all up and down the roads that are very serious and fire dangerous when, especially in the fall. So it's my hope that we do those bins again in the fall. I don't know that we have the money or the wherewithal to do it, but it was a very successful, and our citizens put wood in the bin. I didn't see any couches, no TVs, no junk. It was really well done by our citizens. And so we learned from our citizens that if we'll do that again, it'll be very successful.
And our fire chief likes it. If he can get the money and make it happen, he will. He's doing his best to make sure that happens. And I would just want to add to my comment, to Doral's comment, the reason we can do it is because our citizens were good and only put wood in those things. If they end up being trash bins, we won't be able to do it. But our Chief Northup follows up on that, and it will, if there's any way to do it, he will make it happen. He will. Okay, sure.
Regarding the.
Okay.
Okay,
There you go.
so regarding the wood, it seems like a couple years ago, letter came out that talked about there were going to be fines imposed if you didn't clear your property. And did anything ever become of that? Because I mean, I know lots of people around me who never did their wood. So I got mine all done.
There is a need for us to enforce the fact that we need to have our properties cleaned up. I am not in favor of putting fines out. I'm not in favor of that personally, but our chief sure might. He has the authority to do that. We have had such great success getting more wood out of this city than any other city I've ever visited as far as the chipping program. I believe if we educate, that is better than a fine. So my intent, as long as I'm involved, is to educate people why we need to get that stuff out of their yards and work with them in any way we can to make it happen.
Can I add something? This is from a budget perspective, because I'm all about money. So I don't know if you really caught it, but Doral said something, he said a key word, grant. So our city has been given money, usually by a state agency, specifically for that program. So when we do the chipping, it's because we've gotten money from a program. Now, the last few years, the city operational budget has actually paid some too for the chipping program. And that's actually been part of what's made the chipping a little harder to do. and a little harder to predict. The other thing that both the chief and Doral work on is they work on grants all year long. So when we talk about like going into somebody's property and clearing it for them because they never do it, that would have to come because we got grant money to hire crews to go onto that property and do that work. So grant money is really key to pretty much everything we do around our wood clearing and our chipper program. Otherwise, we have to take that money out of our operational budget, which again, we can do that. That just means we're not doing some other things. And so that I want to make sure everyone is fully aware that most of our fire mitigation efforts have been from grant money.
Well, and additionally, two quick things about, number one, the success that we've had has, other people have watched it and now they want to, other cities, they want a part of it. And so that shrinks the state pool. So because we've done so well and it's been so successful, it's becoming harder for us to get some of that grant money because now more people want a piece of that pie. So that has been a tricky thing. The other thing is enforcement also costs money. And we have sort of erred on the side of spending our money for carrots rather than sticks. We felt like it's a better place to live and it works generally as well or better at the onset. Then you're always going to have your few people that just won't come along unless you get a stick. But most people in our city want to do the right thing and want to do the best thing. And we would rather spend our money and our time providing carrots to help people do the right thing that they want to do in the first place, rather than a stick to whack them. So that's kind of, because we have a limited amount of funds and both of those things cost money. So we've erred on that side here.
Wanted to add to this, our discussion earlier about volunteerism. We do have some, every winter, we're going to have down trees. Every winter, you're going to have an increase of down trees. We have citizens in our community that can no longer, because of their age or some disabilities, can no longer clear their property themselves. Our chief has really gone out of his way to try to provide grant money, especially for those who are widowed, to be able to go in and help them clear that out. But that is one thing you can do in your neighborhood, is look around. If you notice that there's an increase, or you know that there is somebody who physically cannot do it anymore, volunteer to help them to get that out. Some of them are paying some of the youth to do it, but at the same time, as adults, we should step up and see if our neighbors need that assistance, because that greatly helps not only your neighbor, but it helps the city overall. And again, when you clear your brush, make sure you declare your hours with Jody, so that is one way we can prove for the grants, is that we do have citizen participation in matching.
And know that we and all of your neighbors appreciate all the efforts that you each make for this. They are appreciated and do not go unnoticed. Okay, it is 9 o'clock. I think I would like to end this so that you have a time to walk around and look at some of the information, talk to each other, and talk to us individually if you want for a few minutes before we go. And make sure to call people if you have additional questions. Our council members are open. They want to hear from you. They want to interact with you. We are here for you. We love this city as much as you do, and we appreciate you coming tonight. And like I said, this has been really fun. We've missed you, and I'm sure you've missed each other. I don't know if you've missed us, but I'm sure you've missed each other, and we've missed you. So it's great to have you here tonight. Please, look around and look at some of the things that we've accomplished this year. And then there's, like I said, some financial budgetary stuff in the back. So enjoy. And thanks for coming.